Hi everyone. Thanks for attending today's webinar on how to create an effective business continuity program. Here's an agenda for today. We're going to start with introductions, talk about why business continuity management overall, and then discuss business continuity planning overview, risk assessment, business impact analysis. Then talk about the solution design, development, and plan implementation. And then there are a few details regarding readiness procedures and plan updates and maintenance. Then we have some time for Q&A as well. Well, my name is Al Abbas. I'm practice director at BizTech. We provide risk and security, risk management, overall enterprise risk management, internal audit, as well as IT security services. And typically for on-site presentations, we do attendee intros as well, but we'll skip that for this webinar. Now, why business continuity management? Why do you need it? So that's a question I get asked sometimes, although with the different disasters, it's becoming less and less as more people have become aware. So the thing is that businesses cannot recover or they face significant losses in the absence of a proper business continuity management program. So business continuity plan is that talks about what you're going to do, who's going to do what in a disaster situation, and what are the recovery times and others. We'll talk a little more about that later. But in general, you need to have a plan in place, but the business continuity management encompasses not only the plan, but overall life cycle, training, testing, training of the users. Many times people have a plan, but nobody knows about it, or the people who are supposed to be the key people in the planning or during the disaster response, and they don't even know they're part of the disaster response team. So that's an example of training. And then there's a part about testing that you can have a plan, and if you don't do tabletop exercise or any active simulated exercises, you may not really know what to do, and if those are not done on an annual basis, people forget, and they don't even remember who's part of the team, the business continuity team, and what are the steps they need to take. And so online training is very important. So all of these training, testing, and the business impact analysis, we're going to talk about that later as well. So these are different components within business continuity management. So overall, what does a business continuity cover? Okay, why do we need to have that? So the second portion of this slide kind of talks about that. So in the business continuity plan, or BCP, helps you identify what can go wrong, and we do that in the risk assessment and business impact analysis. And if something went wrong, how it would affect the organization. And how would the essential services of the organization be resumed? And that's what the business continuity plan talks about. And again, a little more, BCM or business continuity management ensures and maintains confidence in the organization of the stakeholders. It can include your customers, your clients, your shareholders, as well as your partners or others who depend on you as well. So it means a lot. If you're a supplier, definitely your clients, and they want to make sure you will continue to provide services to them, and not like in a disruption you're not able to provide services, and then the clients are not able to get their services. So that's from a customer standpoint. For the business itself, in a banking situation, people are not able to get money out or cash out. That's one example where, again, clients would not be happy or would not stay, even if there's a delay. So we're not talking about like a full disaster. That's different types. There are different types of disaster, but if somebody needs money and they cannot able to get it in a financial example, that would be a problem for the customer as well as the bank in terms of the reputational loss. Another example, service providers, if you're providing, service and, you're that's outside of financial side, again, you need a BCP. And succession planning comes in as well. If the executive team, somebody in the executive team becomes unavailable or in the unfortunate case passes away, then what's the succession plan? That should all be part of the holistic business continuity management program. So, again, BCM also ensures the safety of people. It minimizes potential revenue loss, reduces the probability of a disaster disruption occurrence, and helps you manage the risk if there is an occurrence, and reduces the impact related to the disruption of services. And so how do you do a business continuity planning exercise? So you start with a risk assessment. First of all, you have to see what's the risk, what are the risks to the organization, and then everything else will flow from there based on the risks that the organization has. You will need to basically tailor your plan according to the risk and the context of the organization. What is a business? So then next we do a business impact analysis. We're going to talk a little more about each step in the next slide. So risk assessment, next is the business impact analysis, where you're seeing what is the impact of the different business units should a disaster happen. Then you create a solution design, do an implementation, and then you have to, it's very important to test the BCP and make adjustments as needed, and then form readiness procedures, preparing the staff on and doing tabletop exercises or other simulated business continuity scenarios, and then doing the maintenance and updates on an ongoing basis. So that's kind of the life cycle of the BCP. So risk assessment, it's often combined with the BIA, business impact analysis, as one step, and it identifies the various risks faced by the organization and the requirements of the organization to resume or continue its services, and helps to identify the general impact from each risk to the organization. And we estimate the relative costs in establishing effective controls to reduce the risks. So whenever there's a risk, you can have different controls, or risk mitigating controls to reduce the risk, and you have to establish the costs. What are the costs to put a control? If the cost is too high compared to the risk, then it's better to it doesn't make sense to put a control that's so costly that the cost is more than the impact the risk would cause. So if that's the case, we just accept the risk because the putting controls is too expensive, or sometimes we put alternate controls. So example is a server room, or like give you a non-IT example, physical premises. In a disaster situation, you have a backup site, so you have a backup physical premises. So that's an example of a control that you're putting in place. You have some exit routes that are developed for exit from the building. So those are some of the examples. And then you have to again. Each risk gets a rating, and then you have established priorities to address the identified risks based on the overall severity level of the risk. So risks, to quantify risks, you can do, I can put rating on basically what's the likelihood of the risk occurring and what's the impact of the risk. And then based on the likelihood and impact, you come up with the overall severity rating of the risk, and then you can prioritize based on the severity rating of the risks. Next, we're going to talk about the business impact analysis. In this phase, we're looking at overall infrastructure requirements. It could be buildings, offices, IT infrastructure, communication equipment, furniture, software, IT, networks, databases, information research material, personnel requirements such as individuals that you're needed. So in a disaster situation, you need to know what are the personnel that you absolutely need, and it may be external contracts. You have some contracts with external vendors that if your core resources are compromised, you need to have the right external vendors or suppliers, maybe even geographically separated out other sites, who are able to provide support and continue the operations from a personnel standpoint. Same goes for infrastructure, buildings, office. If you need a building and office, many times, depending on the organization, remote users can work remotely. Communication equipment. Again, many people depend on phones and cell phones, but in a disaster situation, cell towers go out or cell phones get flooded and phone service is out. So that's where you're looking at alternates. For example, is some municipalities in U.S. When there was some natural disaster storms, they were communicating with the public using Twitter because that was more reliable than other means. So again, social media was used. So there's always, depending on your particular organizational context and the industry and the business you're in, there are different ways of open communication mechanisms that can be put in place in a disaster situation, and it could vary a lot based on geography and technology and the type of business. And then we're looking at transportation requirements and any other requirements necessary to resume the service. So in the business impact analysis, what we do is we identify key resource requirements, and we also, first of all, we start with the critical systems, processes, activities, and we're looking at business impact analysis for each business unit or department. So as an example, look at an organization. So most organizations have an org chart, and they have different business units or function departments within the org chart. And what we do is, business impact analysis. We talk to the head of the particular business unit or department, who is basically responsible for their unit's resumption plan or business continuity plan overall as well. So we help facilitate the business impact analysis and help them come up with the necessary details and simulate the right thinking. So in our project, so as an example, so first of all, the steps are, well, you start with a list of critical activities, processes, or systems that the particular business unit does, and then you identify time sensitivities. What that means is maximum allowable outage. So what is the maximum time that particular critical process, activity, system, or function, what is the maximum time that it can be unavailable before the business starts having significant negative impact? It could be reputational, financial, legal liabilities, operational. So it could be all different types of impact. So and then it would increase based on the number of days. So we see what is the maximum allowable impact, and then we establish, based on determining what's the max MAO or maximum allowable time. Then basically what MAO stands for is maximum allowable outage. So what is the maximum time they can be outed for that particular activity or system. Next measurement for each function is recovery time objective. So based on discussions with the business unit, what is a recovery time objective? By what time? What is the ideal time you would like to recover your operations? So you document that, and you determine that and document that, and then everything else will flow through based on those time sensitivities. So that's RTO is a recovery time objective. RPO is a recovery point objective. So that's mostly for systems, RPO, and what that means is So with systems, what happens is there's a data loss aspect of it. So in this, what we're talking about is what is the maximum what is the maximum amount of data that you can lose without having any significant impact. So that's basically the amount of time that the organization can during which the organization can lose data, and what should be the recovery point objective on that. So again, we're going to keep it brief. We have different presentation on detail because this is a whole detailed topic. So I'm keeping it at a high level for the MAOs, RTOs, and RPOs within a BIA. But if you need to get more details, you can definitely send me an email. That email is listed on the last slide, and we have a presentation on that describing further details and some templates on doing the BIA that we can send if you have the need. So again, once these time sensitivities on MAO, RTO, and RPOs are established, you kind of know, what are the critical systems, what are the time sensitivities, and what are the resources required. So this is the outcome of the BIA. And also, other details include BCP Coordinator. So it's got that's basically you're making teams in a disaster situation, who's going to do what, and then the BCP Coordinator is kind of the central role who coordinates everything, and that's the main responsibility. And then in the BIA, again, each department, division, or branch will have their own BIA, and depending on the organization structure, you can have as fine-grained or as high level as possible, and that's something that we develop based on discussions with the management. So again, sometimes on different engagements, we've seen that organizations think that it's a consulting firm that's delivering the BIA, and then they are owning it. But the thing is that the BIA or BCP, but the BCP is something that's owned by the organization, and time sensitivities are determined by the organization and the department heads. What an external organization or a consultancy such as ours at BitStack can advise you with is to guide you and provide you benchmarking and reference points, and then give you the right structure. Because you own the BCP, BIA, and everything, what we are providing is what we generally, or an external organization or any external person would provide would be stimulate the thinking and provide guidance on what these things are, and ask the right questions so you can have the right answers to cover all aspects of the business continuity plan. And again, BIA lists the internal and external resource requirements. So in a disaster situation, what are the external firms you need to contact? It could be construction contractors, repair contractors. So you need to have the right alliances and engagements, and pre-screened list of suppliers in place, so that should something happen, you don't want to be looking for those resources at the time of disaster because you have other things to worry about. You want to have a list of pre-qualified suppliers for the type of disasters that you can envision may be possible, and have those listed in your plan document. So whoever is the disaster recovery or business continuity team coordinator, they can, or the person assigned to contact the external resources, they can just reach out to the pre-screen list, and it's simple rather than trying to figure out who's where, and especially when communication lines can be impacted as well. So again, the BIA also lists the time needed to acquire and initiate a specific activity, and also it should list the cost of necessary resources, and any deficiencies in the resources, time, and personnel should be documented in the BIA. And BIA is it's a point in time work item. So when you find deficiencies, so BIA should be done routinely. Typically, it's done every 2 to 3 years. It's good to update it as the organization's environment changes, you require an updated BIA, updated time sensitivities. Requirements change, customer requirements change, their expectation changes. You might start offering 24-hour turnaround while 2 years back you were offering a 48-hour turnaround time for different services. It's a high-level example. So when you have those changes, all the changes in service offerings or client commitments, you need to go back and look at all the different processes that support that and make sure there's no bottleneck, or nothing becomes unavailable that is beyond the commitments that you have. And even in disaster situation, analysis would help you determine what is the maximum you can allowable outage and RTOs based on the new changes to the business. So, and those need to be updated in the BIA frequently. So again, best case is have a structure, have a periodic schedule, do it every 2 to 3 years, because if you don't have a periodic schedule, you'll forget about it, and again, you'll fall into the same pitfall of not having a correct BCP in place. Okay, so after the BIA, basically we're looking at doing solution designs. In that we do pre-interruption preparedness and then post-interruption response. So design, basically we're saying, okay, what are the things you need to have? And we covered that, part of it is in the BIA, we covered that in the previous slide. Resources, internal, external resources, and facilities that you need to have in place for the BCP, in a disaster situation. From an IT perspective, you can have a hot site, cold site. These are all. Hot site is when you have live systems on a backup site. Cold site is where you have systems, but you need, they're not operational, they need to be activated, they don't have data, so you need to transfer data. So that's just an example, and it's all determined based on, based on the previous BIA. And you're kind of setting, once the BIA is done, then you're setting up the things, and this is what it's talking about. And it's talking about the post-interruption response procedures, how are you going to do it, having the communication plan documented as well. And, establishing alternate site, it's just talking about some different details about physical site, alternate work site notifications, employee needs, parking, other details, access to storage, of vital records. So example, security is very important. Like a lot of people, in a disaster situation don't think of security, like security of your data, security of information, right? So you don't want, so security includes availability, confidentiality, and integrity. So you don't want systems to be, from the IT side, you don't want systems to have wrong information. For example, the financial system, you don't want, in a disaster situation, you're giving out username, password to other backup people, and if you don't have a plan, you don't know who to give it to, or maybe by mistake you give it to someone who shouldn't have had it, and they get credentials, and then they manipulate information so it's no longer secure. You're kind of, typically what happens in a disaster situation, security kind of puts the back burner, or no, not the back burner, it's kind of gets left behind. So what could happen is that your systems could get compromised. Your security, the physical security may not be, maybe forgotten for a time. So you may have some intruders who come in and take things out, or take sensitive information, or take sensitive equipment, or anything. So you need to be kind of prepared for that and keep security in place during a disaster situation as well. And then plan implementation. So what you have to, within the disaster business continuity plan, what you need to document and develop and identify and determine is what, there's an incident, you have to, what is the procedure to activate the plan. So you have to confirm an incident, you have to see whether the activation, whether the incident amounts to the level that it should, you need to activate the plan, whether activation is real or an exercise, whether the activated persons are to meet, when the activated persons are to meet, an information flow, how the information should flow, what is the chain of what is a call list? We develop a call list or email list. Now with email and Twitter, it's a little different. And then, but depending on your organization, communication across across the board, public information can be communicated. But if you're doing internal recovery strategies, you cannot use like social media or others. So you need to have alternate call lists should the phone systems be available, or use alternate methods. We had a client who had backup. The business continuity team also had other wireless communication devices like a walkie-talkie type of thing. So it was specific to that organization. They could work with it. That's what they determined was the best situation in their organization setup, because it was physically in one location. It may not work for this, so we have to identify a specific strategy for a particular industry, organization, your location. Now, again, within the plan, we list initial briefing, summary of the incident. These are some of the steps. The potential for activation, any guidance to the business continuity team manager and by the executive committee. And meeting times. We have clients who are not kind of now with remote work environment. You don't need to meet physically, but depending on like say if you're a bank, you have physical brick and mortar. You need to have a place to meet as well. And you need to develop an emergency operations center. It could be a virtual EOC or it could be physical. We're seeing more direction towards going virtual now, as everything can be done virtually. But again, it varies from organization to organization. And who are the people you need to inform of the service disruption? That happens a lot. You see in the news of some people who should be informed were never informed. Recently in Vancouver, there was an oil spill, and there was a lot of fighting between, like, the city was saying we were never informed until the next day by the Coast Guard. So that's just an example. You need to have the right plan. You need to have all the partners and stakeholders identified and who you're going to inform. So you don't want stain on your reputation by having other people saying, oh, we weren't even informed, the customers saying, oh, we went to the bank and we weren't able to get cash out because we were not even informed that there's an issue. So so communication plan, having the right information communicated is very important. Next, so communication internally and externally should be identified. And again, the plan lists the identification of tasks to be completed, what are the roles and responsibilities, and the identification of teams to do different activities, and whatever additional information requirements are needed in your particular situation. Other implementation considerations. To implement something, you need to have awareness programs in place. You have to have telephone hotlines or other methods of communication available. And during disaster, you need to have the right alliances or contacts or contracts in place with counseling suppliers tailored to the nature of the impact. And it varies again. It varies. Some organizations find that it's based on their budget, their size, and their nature of the organization. They don't need that, but these are some of the things to consider and evaluate whether you need it or you don't. And additional activities to get employees involved, including examples include blood donation, disaster assistance, or collection drives. Then other areas include damage assessment and salvage activities. So what we're looking at is basically availability of the teams, equipment, and training of damage assessment. So somebody needs to assess what is the damage, and you need to have the right people assess what's the right damage and what can be salvaged, and what is needed to bring the organization back to normal operations. So that's the recovery stage, and you need to have a document of what's the step by step. I don't know everything in real, in actuality may be a little different, but you have a reference point on what you should be doing. And plan versus actual, there may be variance. You cannot predict 100%, because you have a guideline that you can go with and reference with. because without any guideline, you're completely out in the open. You don't know what you're doing. So it's always good to have a plan. And you need to have the policies related to both insurance and vital records that may impact the activities of the team. So again, insurance, you need to have the right insurance plan. One of the outcomes of the planning and impact analysis to have the right insurance in place. So risks can be mitigated with controls, but can be transferred also with insurance. A communication plan is very important. When we make a business continuity plan, we have scripts or what exactly the CEO should communicate, or the press release, or the press officer should communicate. Different organizations have different responsibilities. What should be said? We have scripts for that. And then again, we develop scripts for that as well for different engagements. So, and this is some of the sample guidelines. Data time is the first public information release. So usually it's the X number of days, or X time. It gives you some guidance on what should be done or put in place in a communication plan. And mechanism for facilitating employee communication. So there's external stakeholder communication, client communication, and there's also overall employee communication. So because employees are getting kind of edgy as well, they don't know what's the future of the company. Should they stay? Should they leave? Again, it's all it has to be specific to the context of the disaster, but generally that's the case as well. So employee communication is very important. Activation of an advisory prioritization list. So again, this is kind of the call list. You need to have not only the call list, but also you need to have the right advisors, and you need to have a priority list for the advisors and partners. We talked a little bit about partners. So again, data is if you're using an external vendor, I'm talking about the last bullet here. If you're using an external vendor for the services, they need to have the data, they need to have access to data, and most likely will be significant volumes of data. So you need to make sure you have the right partnerships in place, and you have a plan on how you will transfer data. Because if you have it in-house, your external partner does not need to have that data in a normal situation, how would you transfer the data to your support organization, external vendor in a disaster situation? Well, when the plan is made, you need to test the plan. So you need to determine exercise objectives, establish policies and guidelines. So sometimes people just do it once and forget about it. So that's why we talk about business continuity management, in which you have policies and guidelines, and then testing would be part of it. And then determine minimum level of exercise. So what are the levels of exercise in the plan? And you need to have a methodology in place, whether you do tabletop exercises or simulations, and specify level of exercises. And these are just some examples. Identify a progression process, include an exercise schedule, and that's things just don't happen if there's no schedule. So other operational activities take precedence, and then things fall through the cracks until something actually happens in a disaster, and then people are not prepared. So it's good to have an exercise schedule in place. And again, after each exercise, there'll be something found, some minor improvements, some changes to the business, so you need to update the plan accordingly. So you need to have post-exercise reporting and see how things went, and maybe somebody got it, some group has not received the training, and they need to be trained so that the exercises can be done properly and they are well trained. So you do fire drills. That's just an example of exercises. So overall business continuity, fire drill is just one portion, but you have to do exercise of the business continuity plan overall as well, just like you do fire drills. And again, implement lessons learned based on the results of the exercises, and develop a change management process to account for the lessons learned. So again, change management within the BCM business continuity management context that you're talking about. This is a sample flow chart for testing. So, it's pretty overall descriptive, decision to test, identify the BCP to test, decide on type of testing, and then secure resources for testing, and see if you require rehearsal, test date, time, location, brief, and train test participants, execute the test plan, document test. So it's just overall covering what the decision flow should be and testing the business continuity plan. Now we're talking about governance, maintenance, and updates. So there should be a matrix developed for maintenance and update of the BCP ERP. I touched a little bit earlier on maintenance. People just make something and forget about it many times. And I've seen many times it's coming from the regulator, especially in banking or financial institutions. They're required to have a plan and they just make it and forget about it. And then it's not current, it's outdated. It's basically equal to, like, once you make the plan and if you don't do exercises or testing, it's not as useful. But again, a few years down the road, if you don't maintain it and update it, it's again 3-4 years later, your business has changed. It may as well be useless as it's no longer valid. I've seen plans where individuals were assigned who are no longer working at the organization. So update of the plan is very important to reflect the current business and organization environment. And then, distribution list should be updated. You don't want to be having people in the distribution list. So, for example, external partners, if the external partner is no longer in business or maybe they're not providing the same service anymore, you need to have that updated so you need to assess if you still have the right partners as you had when originally the plan was made. So the best way to do it is to have a periodic maintenance schedule and schedule meetings internally to review the plan, quarterly meetings just to see an update or 6-monthly meeting, and then do a full-blown review every 2 to 3 years. But it's good to at least have that in consideration. And while you're developing, from an IT side or any other project side, for any project that's happening, business continuity should always be considered and availability should always be considered within the project. Security and business continuity and disaster recovery should be required considerations for each project. So it shouldn't be that you made the plan now and then when you have another project going on, you forget about it and you don't update the plan. So the plan should always be updated based on new projects, and it should be a control point before a project is completed and sign-off received. Update to the BCP ERP should be a requirement. And the same goes for BCP with any updates. The project should be kept in mind. So when we update the BCP, any new projects or systems should be considered whether they should be part of BCP ERP or not. So again, the update responsibility should be, depending on the organization, I've seen the responsibility hang with the CEO or the HR or designated to the BCP team for the individual department updates. And scheduling and training of the BCP is typically the responsibility of the HR team leader. And again, I touched a little bit about it, the meeting and plan exercises every 6 months to ensure the plan is current. The key areas to be addressed is contact list, business functions, roles, and responsibilities within the BCP team as well, and review the phases of recovery and procedure details. And it's always good to perform an active BCP test once a year, at least. Testing, again, ensures plan remains a viable document, trains recovery personnel. So testing not only helps you test the validity of the plan, but also helps train the recovery personnel and ensures strategy and action that reflect current business recovery requirements. So if you have any questions, I think we're kind of over the time we had allocated. So you can send the questions to my email address. That's abbas@bistechmasters.com. That's listed here. And we have a service description that's available on our website at bistechmasters.com. Then click on Risk and Security, and then you'll see the Business Continuity Plan service listing. And if you need any help with developing, doing a business risk assessment, business impact analysis, or developing the BCP, doing the BCP implementation, you can visit our website or send me an email and send us a message from our website, and I'll be happy to assist you with your business continuity management needs. Thanks everyone for attending this webinar, and I look forward to seeing you again in our future webinars. Bye-bye.